Princess Azalvana of the Zorveni Empire stood tall inside her personal chamber aboard the Imperial starship Valkyrian. Her golden armor gleamed under the soft blue lights, her long silver hair braided in the traditional style of her people. Her expression was calm, her posture perfect, yet inside, her mind was restless. She had been sent on an important mission to establish diplomatic relations with the humans. The Terran Federation had risen faster than any species expected, turning from a minor spacefaring race to a military powerhouse in just a few decades. The Zorvani, who once thought of humans as insignificant, now had no choice but to acknowledge their strength. Her father, Emperor Xaltharian, had given her a simple command: secure an alliance. Do not show weakness. She took a deep breath as the ship prepared to dock with the Terran flagship Iron Will. The name itself carried weight, a reflection of the human spirit. She had studied them. Humans were unpredictable, emotional, and reckless, yet somehow they thrived. They adapted to any challenge, fought without hesitation, and refused to submit. And now she would meet one of them face to face. The airlock hissed open, and Azalvana stepped forward with controlled grace, flanked by two of her royal guards. The docking bridge extended, and on the other side, waiting for her, was him, Major Ethan Carter. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his navy blue uniform crisp and decorated with medals. His dark eyes studied her, sharp and unreadable. Unlike the Zorvani, who were tall and lean, he was broad-shouldered, built like a warrior carved from stone. There was something about the way he stood, relaxed, yet ready to strike at any moment. Princess Azalvana, he greeted, his voice deep, steady. Welcome aboard the Iron Will. She nodded, keeping her tone diplomatic. Major Carter, it is an honor. But something was wrong. Her heart was beating too fast. It was illogical. She had met warriors, diplomats, and leaders from across the galaxy. Yet, standing in front of this human, something felt different. He smirked slightly. I hope the trip wasn't too boring. We humans like to keep things interesting. His casual tone caught her off guard. Zorvani diplomacy was formal, rigid. Yet this human spoke like they were equals. No hesitation, no fear. I value efficiency over entertainment, she replied smoothly, trying to push aside the strange feeling creeping up her spine. Well, Ethan said, stepping aside, let's get to work. We got a lot to discuss. Azalvana lifted her chin and walked past him, refusing to let the moment affect her. But deep inside, she already knew this mission was going to be more difficult than she had expected. Princess Azalvana stood on the observation deck of the Iron Will, her sharp golden eyes watching the human soldiers below. They moved in perfect coordination, their weapons firing in precise bursts as they tore through combat drones in a simulated battlefield. She had seen countless warriors in action, but this was different. Zorveni soldiers trained for discipline and control, every movement calculated, every strike executed with precision. But humans, they fought with a strange mix of chaos and instinct, adapting in real time. No wasted movements, no hesitation. Beside her, Major Ethan Carter watched with his arms crossed, a small smirk on his face. Not bad, huh? Azalvana kept her expression neutral. They are effective. Ethan chuckled. That's one way to put it. She studied the soldiers again. Some used heavy weapons, others moved in fast, unpredictable patterns, dodging and weaving between enemy fire. They were aggressive, relentless. It was both impressive and concerning. Ethan turned to her. You ever spar with a human before? Azalvana raised an eyebrow. No. He grinned. Then today's your lucky day. Before she could respond, he gestured toward the training arena. Come on, princess. Let's see what you've got. Her first instinct was to refuse. She was a royal, a trained warrior of the Zorveni Empire. She did not need to prove herself. But a part of her, a very small, irrational part, wanted to see what this human was like in a fight. She stepped down into the arena, removing the ceremonial outer layer of her armor, leaving only her fitted combat suit. Ethan rolled his shoulders, stretching his arms. "No weapons," he said. "Hand to hand only." She nodded. Agreed. The moment the match began, Zolvana moved first. She was fast, faster than any normal soldier. Her movements were precise, honed from years of training. She aimed a strike at Ethan's side, expecting him to dodge back. But he didn't. Instead, he caught her wrist midair, twisted slightly, and forced her off balance. Before she could react, he had already stepped behind her, his presence overwhelming. She barely managed to spin away, creating distance. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from surprise. He was fast. Too fast. Ethan smirked. "You're good, but you're thinking too much." She narrowed her eyes. "And you're reckless. Reckless keeps us alive." She attacked again, this time adjusting, adapting. Their movements became a blur. Strikes, counters, dodges. But no matter how well she fought, Ethan was always half a step ahead. His fighting style was unpredictable, wild yet controlled. Then, in a single swift motion, he hooked his leg behind hers, sending her to the ground. Before she could recover, he was already standing over her, hand extended. She stared at him, breathless, struggling to control the unfamiliar feeling rising inside her. Ethan grinned. "Told you. We never back down." For the first time in her life, Princess Zolvana felt truly challenged. Princess Zolvana walked through the steel corridors of the Iron Will, her steps measured, her face calm. But inside, she was anything but calm. Major Ethan Carter walked beside her, his posture relaxed, his movements effortless. Unlike the Zorvani, who valued discipline in every step, humans moved with a natural ease. It was strange, yet impressive. His confidence was not forced. It was the confidence of someone who had seen battles and survived. "Your ship is functional," Zolvana said, keeping her tone neutral. "The Iron will lack the elegance of Zorvani vessels. It was not built for beauty, but for war." Thick steel walls, exposed machinery, and a strong scent of metal filled the air. Ethan chuckled. "Yeah, we don't do fancy. We build things to last, not to impress." That attitude was exactly why humans were dangerous. They wasted no time on unnecessary details. Everything they did was direct, efficient, and built for survival. As they entered the meeting room, Zolvana studied the space. A simple table, a few chairs, and a large window showing the endless void of space. No decorations, no unnecessary symbols of power, only function. Ethan gestured to a chair. "Have a seat, Princess." She hesitated for half a second before sitting down. Ethan took the seat across from her, leaning back slightly, his sharp eyes watching her carefully. "You seem tense," he noted. "Nervous." Zolvana narrowed her eyes. A Zorvani royal is never nervous. Ethan smirked. "Sure." There it was again, that casual tone, as if they were just two warriors talking, not representatives of two powerful empires. He spoke as if she were not a princess, as if her title did not intimidate him. This was different. Every alien species she had met treated her with either fear or excessive respect. But Ethan Carter, he treated her like just another soldier. And for some reason, that made her heart beat faster. "We should begin the negotiations," she said, pushing aside her thoughts. "Our empires have much to discuss." "Of course." Ethan leaned forward, his expression turning serious. "Let's talk about the real reason you're here." She raised an eyebrow. "And what do you think that reason is, Major?" "You're not here just for an alliance," Ethan said. "The Zorvani know humans are rising fast. You need to understand what kind of people we are before your empire makes its next move." His words were direct, cutting through any diplomatic formality. It was both frustrating and impressive. Humans didn't waste time with hidden meanings. They said what they thought. Zolvana met his gaze, determined not to let him see the effect he had on her. "Then tell me, Major Carter, what kind of people are you?" Ethan smiled, but this time there was something dangerous in it. "We're the kind that never backs down." Zolvana felt a strange shiver run through her. This mission was going to be far more difficult than she had ever imagined. Princess Zolvana had always followed orders without question. But now, standing in her quarters aboard the Iron Will, she found herself trapped between duty and something far more dangerous: desire. Her transport back to the Zorveni fleet would arrive in a few hours. Once she boarded, her life would return to rigid rules and endless expectations. The Empire would not tolerate hesitation. And yet, hesitation was all she felt. A chime echoed through the room. She already knew who it was. "Enter," she said, her voice steady. Ethan Carter stepped inside, his expression unreadable. There was no smirk, no teasing remark, just silence. "So," he said finally, "this is it." She met his gaze, searching for something, anything that would make this easier. "It must be." Ethan nodded slowly, but his eyes held something sharp. "Because they told you so." Zolvana inhaled deeply. "Because I have a duty." He took a step forward. "And what if your duty is wrong?" She frowned. "The Zorveni Empire does not question its path." Ethan let out a quiet chuckle. "Yeah, I've noticed." He crossed his arms. "But you do." Her heart pounded. "That is irrelevant." "It's not," he said, voice steady. "You feel it, don't you? The doubt, the pull towards something more." Zolvana clenched her fists. "What I feel does not matter." Ethan's eyes darkened. "Then why are you still here?" She froze. He was right. If she had truly accepted her fate, she would already be preparing for departure. Instead, she had delayed, hesitated, hoped. She had never been given a choice before. But now she had one. Ethan exhaled, stepping closer. "You don't have to decide right now. But just once, ask yourself, what do you want?" Zolvana's chest tightened. No one had ever asked her that. The alarm for incoming transport rang through the ship. Her time was up. Ethan watched her, waiting. He would not beg. He would not command. He would simply let her choose. For the first time in her life, the choice was hers alone. Princess Zolvana had always believed emotions were a weakness. Control was her strength, her shield. But ever since stepping aboard this human warship, ever since meeting him, cracks had begun to form in that shield. And Ethan Carter, he seemed determined to widen them. They walked side by side down the dimly lit corridor of the Iron Will. Their conversation from earlier still echoed in her mind. What is it like to live without control? It's freeing. She didn't understand that. How could humans embrace uncertainty, live by instinct instead of order? It was reckless. It was dangerous. And yet, part of her invited. Ethan glanced at her. "You're thinking hard about something again." Zolvana kept her gaze forward. "I am always thinking." He smirked. "Maybe that's the problem." She frowned. "You believe thinking is a flaw." "No," he said, hands in his pockets. "I just think sometimes you gotta stop thinking and start feeling." She stopped walking. That word again. Feeling. Her golden eyes locked onto his. "And what, Major, do you think I should be feeling right now?" Ethan turned fully to face her, his expression unreadable. But there was something in his gaze, something she was afraid to name. "That's the real question, isn't it?" he said, voice lower now. Zolvana felt an unfamiliar tightness in her chest. Was this nervousness? No, Zorveni did not get nervous. She straightened her posture, pushing the feeling away. "This conversation is irrelevant. We have more important matters to focus on." Ethan sighed, but there was amusement in his eyes. "You always run from the uncomfortable stuff, huh?" "I do not run," she said sharply. He took a step closer, his presence almost overwhelming. "Then answer me honestly. Princess, if you weren't a royal, if you weren't bound by duty, what would you want? Zalvanna opened her mouth, but no words came. What did she want? No one had ever asked her that before. Her entire life had been about responsibility, about fulfilling expectations. She had never been given the luxury of wanting. The silence stretched between them. Ethan waited, patient but unrelenting. He wasn't teasing her this time. He truly wanted to know. She looked away. I do not have an answer for you. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Fair enough. He didn't push, didn't demand more. That unsettled her more than anything. As they resumed walking, Zalvanna felt something shift inside her. For the first time in her life, she questioned whether the path she walked was truly her choice, or if it had always been chosen for her. Princess Zalvanna sat across from Major Ethan Carter in the Terran flagship's meeting chamber. The air between them was heavy with unspoken tension, not of hostility, but of something else, something she could not fully understand. The negotiations had begun, but already she could see how different humans were from the Zorveni. Her people followed strict diplomatic protocols, speaking in careful, measured words. Humans, they were direct, informal, and unpredictable. So tell me, Princess, Ethan said, leaning back in his chair with a relaxed confidence. Why now? The Zorveni have ignored us for years. Why suddenly decide to talk? Zalvanna kept her expression calm. The Terran Federation has grown. Stronger. It would be unwise to ignore that. Ethan smirked. You mean we became a problem? She did not respond, but his words were not incorrect. The Zorveni once saw humans as insignificant, a young race with no place among the great empires. But now, humanity had expanded, fought wars, and won. They had proven themselves dangerous. Ethan tapped a finger on the table. I get it. You want to know what makes us tick, what kind of people we are. Fair enough. Zalvanna nodded. And what will I find, Major Carter? He chuckled. A species that refuses to lose. His words sent a strange feeling through her. The Zorveni valued control, order, and tradition. Humans. They thrived in chaos. They adapted, changed, and refused to follow the rules of the universe. That is why your people are dangerous, she admitted. You do not fear uncertainty. You embrace it. Ethan shrugged. Survival of the fittest, Princess. We weren't given the luxury of a peaceful evolution. Earth was brutal, so we became brutal too. Zalvanna studied him carefully. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes were sharp, always watching, always calculating. There was no fear in him, no hesitation. He did not see her as a superior, nor did he see himself as lesser. This unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. A small device on Ethan's wrist beeped. He glanced at it before standing up. You're about to see another part of us, Princess. Come with me. She hesitated for a moment before rising. Where are we going? Ethan grinned. A combat demonstration. I think you'll find it educational. As she followed him through the steel corridors of the Iron Will, she told herself that this was just another part of her mission, just another step toward securing an alliance. But deep inside, she knew the truth. The more time she spent around this human soldier, the harder it was to stay collected. Princess Zalvanna stood in the dim glow of the command deck, her thoughts a tangled mess. She had spent her entire life mastering control, silencing emotions before they could take root. But now doubt crept in like a shadow, and Ethan Carter was the cause. The human soldier had done something no one else ever had. He had made her question her duty, her beliefs, herself. She turned as the door slid open. Ethan stepped inside, arms crossed, his usual smirk missing. We need to talk. Zalvanna straightened. About what? He sighed. I just got word. The Zorveni High Council is recalling you. Your mission here is over. For a moment, she felt nothing. Then, a strange tightness bloomed in her chest. Understood, she said coolly. When do I leave? Ethan's jaw tensed. Tomorrow. She nodded. It was logical. Expected. This was never meant to last. Then why did it feel wrong? Ethan stepped closer. You don't have to go. Zolvana's breath caught. That is not a choice I can make. He shook his head. Bullshit. You're a warrior, a leader. You should get to decide your own future. She turned away. You do not understand my people. Duty comes before desire. Then maybe your people are wrong. She spun back, eyes blazing. Do not speak of things you cannot understand, Major. Ethan didn't flinch. Then help me understand. Because right now, all I see is someone who's been told what to be her whole life, instead of being who she wants to be. His words struck deeper than she wanted to admit. Her voice was quieter when she spoke again. I do not know what I want. Ethan exhaled, stepping even closer. Then maybe it's time to find out. They stood inches apart now, the air between them thick with something unspoken, something dangerous. For the first time, Zolvana allowed herself to truly feel. And what she felt was fire. She could not stay. But she did not want to leave. The transport ship loomed outside the Iron Will, waiting for Princess Zolvana to board. The final call echoed through the halls, but she remained frozen in place, her heart pounding like a war drum. This was it, the moment she had been trained for her entire life. She would return to the Zorveni Empire, fulfill her duty, and erase every trace of the emotions that had threatened her control. And yet, her feet refused to move. Behind her, Ethan Carter stood in silence. He had said nothing after their last conversation, offering neither argument nor plea. He simply waited, his expression unreadable. Your people are waiting for you, he said finally, his voice quiet. Zolvana swallowed hard. Yes. They expect you to leave. Yes. Ethan tilted his head slightly. And what do you expect? Her breath caught. That question again. The same one that had haunted her since the moment she met him. What did she want? She had always believed her fate was decided for her. That duty was unbreakable. But now, standing on the edge of two possible futures, she realized something terrifying. She had a choice. Slowly, she turned to face Ethan. His blue eyes held no demand, no pressure. Only quiet patience. Zolvana inhaled sharply. Her voice faltered. For the first time in her life, she spoke not as a princess, not as a warrior, but as herself. I do not wish to leave. Ethan's expression softened, but he did not move, did not celebrate. He waited for her to make the final decision. Her hands curled into fists. For once, I want to choose my own path. Not because of duty, not because of tradition. She lifted her chin, her voice stronger now. But because I want it. A slow smile spread across Ethan's face. Then stay. Zolvana turned back to the window, watching as the transport ship prepared for departure. The weight of expectation pressed against her, but for the first time, she did not let it control her. With a deep breath, she stepped away from the door. The Zorvani transport ship launched into space without her. Behind her, Ethan let out a quiet chuckle. So, does this mean I get to teach you more about living without control? Zolvana smirked, something light and unfamiliar blooming in her chest. We shall see, Major, we shall see. And for the first time in her life, she felt free. Princess Zolvana sat alone in her guest quarters aboard the Iron Will, her mind still replaying the sparring match with Major Ethan Carter. No one had ever fought her like that before. No hesitation, no fear, just raw skill and instinct. Her pride should have been wounded, but instead, she felt something else, something she did not want to name. Taking a deep breath, she straightened her posture. Control, discipline, order. These were the foundations of the Zorvani way. She would not allow a single human soldier to disturb her composure. A soft chime echoed through the room. Someone was at the door. Enter, she commanded. The door slid open, and there he was, Ethan Carter. His uniform was slightly disheveled, his stance relaxed as always, yet there was an energy in his presence that unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. "Couldn't sleep either, huh?" he said with a knowing smirk. Zalvanna frowned. "I do not suffer from restlessness." He stepped inside, arms crossed. "Really? Because you seem a little tense." She stiffened. "State your purpose, Major." Ethan leaned against the wall, his gaze never leaving hers. "I was just checking in. You took that fall pretty hard today." Her jaw tightened. "I am fine." He chuckled. "You say that, but you're gripping the armrest like you're about to snap it in half." Zalvanna forced herself to relax. She would not let him see that he had affected her. "Zorvani warriors do not dwell on defeats. We learn and improve." Ethan nodded. "Good, because I wouldn't call it a defeat. More like a lesson." She exhaled slowly. "You fight differently. It is unlike anything I have encountered." He grinned. "Humans don't fight with just training. We fight with instinct. We don't follow a script. We adapt." Adaptation. That was the word that made humans dangerous. They refused to be predictable. For a moment, there was only silence between them. The air felt heavier than before. Then Ethan's voice softened. "You know, you don't have to be this serious all the time." Zalvanna raised an eyebrow. "I am a princess of the Zorveni Empire. My duty is to." Yeah. Duty, control, no emotions," he interrupted, waving a hand. "I get it. But you're not just a princess. You're a warrior. And warriors don't just follow rules. They feel things." Her breath caught slightly. Did he see through her so easily? Ethan took a step closer, his voice lower now. "So tell me, princess, what are you feeling right now?" Zalvanna's pulse quickened. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to remain composed. "I feel nothing," she said firmly. Ethan's smirk returned, but there was something knowing in his eyes. "Sure," he said, his tone full of quiet confidence. "If you say so." Then, without another word, he turned and left, leaving her alone, her mask still in place, but barely. Princess Zalvanna stood in the observation deck of the Iron Will, staring out into the endless void of space. The stars were constant, unmoving, unchanging. Unlike humans. Unlike him. Major Ethan Carter was unlike anyone she had ever met. He was unpredictable, unshaken by rank or status. He fought with instinct, spoke with confidence, and carried himself as if the universe itself was his to challenge. And worse, he made her feel. Her grip on the railing tightened. She had trained her entire life to control her emotions, to rule with logic and strength. And yet, one human soldier had managed to unsettle her in mere days. This seat taken. She turned sharply, already knowing the voice. Ethan stood behind her, hands in his pockets, wearing that ever-present smirk. "You humans have no respect for personal space," she said, trying to regain her composure. Ethan chuckled. "We like to keep things personal." He stepped up beside her, leaning casually on the railing. "You looked like you were deep in thought." She exhaled. "I was considering the unpredictable nature of your species." He grinned. "Let me guess. You don't like things you can't control." Zalvanna shot him a sharp glance. "Control is necessary for survival." Ethan shrugged. "Maybe. But sometimes, letting go of control is what keeps you alive." She frowned. "That is illogical." "Is it?" He turned to face her, his gaze steady. "You saw our soldiers train. You fought me yourself. You know humans don't just follow orders like machines. We adapt. We feel. That's what makes us dangerous." She hated to admit it, but he was right. Ethan continued, his voice softer now. "Tell me something, princess. Have you ever done something just because you wanted to? Not because duty demanded it?" Zalvanna hesitated. The answer was no. Everything she did, every action, every word, was calculated, controlled, dictated by duty and tradition. And yet, she looked at him. Why does it matter? Ethan smiled, but this time, it wasn't his usual teasing smirk. It was something else. Something gentler. Because I think there's more to you than just a warrior in golden armor. Her heart did something strange then. Something she was not prepared for. She looked away. You are mistaken, Major. Ethan let out a quiet laugh. If you say so. For a moment, silence stretched between them. But it was not uncomfortable. It was charged, like the stillness before a storm. Then, to her own surprise, she spoke. What is it like? To live without control. Ethan turned his head slightly, studying her with an unreadable expression. Then he grinned. It's freeing. The Zolvana said nothing, but for the first time in her life, she wondered. What would it feel like to be free?